Happy New Year, Solutioneers! Welcome back to the Upstream vlog. I'm Sydney Harris, Strategic Policy Advisor for Upstream. To kick off Upstream's 2023 vlog series, today I'll be highlighting some of the major state and local level reuse policy victories from last year. Policy is a critical part of the reuse movement. At the state or federal level, laws such as EPR, DRS, and more can drive the biggest companies to innovate and redesign their products and packaging and to make reuse available and accessible to all consumers. These laws can also provide crucial funding for the transition to the new reuse economy. At the local level, ordinances requiring or incentivizing reuse can have tremendous and immediate on-the-ground impact in communities large and small. So let's take a look at some of the biggest policy wins of 2022. Among the biggest policy headlines in 2022 were the passage of Colorado's and California's Extended Producer Responsibility, or EPR, laws for consumer packaging. They became the third and fourth states in the country to enact packaging EPR last year after Maine and Oregon passed the first two laws in 2021. EPR requires the producers of consumer goods, mostly the big consumer brands we recognize from day-to-day life, to take responsibility for their packaging waste by funding and sometimes overseeing operations for local recycling programs. But beyond recycling, these laws also create economic incentives for producers to switch to reusable packaging. Both Colorado and California's new packaging EPR laws require an initial statewide needs assessment, which will outline the current lay of the land in each state when it comes to reuse. These studies will help identify what's needed to expand reuse and refill. Both also exempt reusable packaging from paying fees into the system, whereas producers will pay fees for all single-use packaging they use. And both must create further economic incentives for producers to switch to reusables through the program's fee structures. In both states, producers will also fund consumer education and outreach on reuse and refill, such as ensuring consumers are aware of reuse opportunities and which types of packaging are refillable. California's law also implements some strict performance targets for plastics, including a mandate that by January 1st, 2028, at least 30% of single-use plastic items sold, distributed, or imported into the state will be recyclable, and this figure increases to 65% by 2032. Further upstream, the law mandates a 25% reduction in single-use plastic waste by 2032, with some more aggressive targets for expanded polystyrene, aka foam. Producers must meet this source reduction target in part by switching to reusable packaging. It's also just worth noting that over 30 packaging EPR proposals were introduced or carried over into 2022 across state legislatures, with reuse featuring prominently in many of these bills, and that's not even counting all the momentum for expanded bottle bills. This in itself is a policy victory, showcasing unprecedented momentum for the transition to a circular economy with reuse at its core. In addition to state-level policies, cities and counties were busy pushing for reuse in their communities. Administratively, cities and counties in California had to update their codes last year to implement a new statewide law known as AB 1276, requiring restaurants to provide single-use accessories like utensils or straws only on request, among other things. Cities from San Diego to Walnut Creek passed local ordinances to implement this new state law, and some added their own flair in the process. In LA, the Accessories Upon Request ordinance also requires zero waste practices at city facilities and events. Perhaps most prominently last year, cities and counties, especially in California, continued passing ordinances to require reusables for on-site dining, bringing the total to 15 municipalities in California alone with such policies in place. Notable mentions include Marin County's Reusable Foodware Ordinance, requiring reusables for on-site dining and allowing customers to bring their own containers for takeout. The law also requires compostable or recyclable aluminum containers for takeout if customers don't bring their own, and adds a charge on disposable cups. It also bans plastic and plastic-lined paper takeout containers. LA County passed a similar ordinance, requiring single-use foodware, including utensils, takeout containers, and cups, to be compostable or recyclable, banning expanded polystyrene, aka foam, products, and requiring reusable foodware at full-service dine-in eateries. The cities of Pacifica, Truckee, and Half Moon Bay also passed similar laws last year, requiring or encouraging reusables for on-site dining. There are many ways local governments can support reuse, such as mandating reuse in government facilities, requiring single-use food and drinkware to be provided only on request, or banning single-use accessories altogether, and placing charges on disposable containers. Check out our Reuse Policy Playbook, Roadmap to Reuse, and Policy Tracker for a more detailed breakdown of local level policies. We also saw continued momentum for reuse at the federal level last year, with a new funding for reuse thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure law. Also at the federal level, the Biden administration invited public comments on proposed updates to federal purchasing policy aimed at reducing single-use plastics and packaging. We expect to see further updates on both of these fronts this year. These federal initiatives may not feel as satisfying as the national bottle bill would, but a national emphasis on reuse and waste prevention, especially one that includes historic funding opportunities for local communities to support reuse, is a big step in the right direction. Lastly, the Upstream team was pleased to draw continued inspiration from communities abroad. Here are just a few examples. The City of Edmonton in Alberta, Canada, passed the Single-Use Item Reduction Bylaw, which requires reusable cups for dine-in restaurants and also requires restaurants to develop policies for customers who bring their own. The law also requires accessories like utensils to be provided only on request or via self-serve stations, bans polystyrene foam, and adds a fee to paper and new reusable bags. Across the Atlantic, the European Commission published proposed policy targets that would reduce the generation of packaging waste by 5%, 10%, and 15% by 2030, 2035, and 2040, respectively, require reuse and refill targets for a variety of food and beverage packaging beginning in 2030, and require all packaging to be designed for recycling starting in 2030 and to be recycled at scale starting in 2035. Of course, Upstream was thrilled to see negotiations begin in Uruguay for the Global Plastics Treaty as well, and we hope to see future negotiations include robust discussion on reuse. I hope you enjoyed this quick recap of reuse policy victories from 2022 because it's time to take this inspiration and dive in to make 2023 another banner year for reuse. Join Upstream and our networks of reuse champions in the National Reuse Network or Government Reuse Forum. If you want to promote reuse policy in your own community, consider joining or launching a reuse coalition. And of course, don't forget to check out the plethora of resources on our website and tune into the Indisposable podcast to hear from the many heroes of the reuse movement. If you enjoyed this vlog, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Thanks for your support.